America's 2025 political madness is shredding global faith in democracy. Conspiracy theories aren't just memes, they're hijacking millions of minds. It's not just a US drama, it's rattling allies from Tokyo to Berlin. Picture a 2025 political stage twisted into a marionette theater, where fear, lies, and raw division yank the strings of millions. Conspiracy theories, once laughed off as basement rants, now choke mainstream discourse, trapping people like moths in a spider's snare, splitting not just America, but a world already wobbling on shaky geopolitical ground. Robert De Niro's voice slices through this mess like a blade, dropping a brutal truth. Those who think they're fighting for right are just pawns in a rigged game of chaos. This isn't just America's headache. It's a global crisis, with the US's internal dumpster fire sending sparks across trade routes, alliances, and the shaky scaffolding of democratic values everywhere. Fear's the real puppet master, as De Niro points out, pushing folks to cling to wild narratives like they're life rafts in a hurricane. A 2024 Pew Research Center survey showed 74% of Americans fretting over democratic decay, with 62% blaming misinformation for ripping society apart. This ain't just a domestic vibe, it's global. A 2025 G7 summit report flagged a 55% drop in trust in US leadership since 2015, per the Council on Foreign Relations, as America's conspiracy-fueled brawls make it look like a shaky bet. NATO's sweating, the World Trade Organization's on edge, and allies like Canada, Japan, and Germany boosted bilateral trade deals, excluding the US by 20%, per a 2025 OECD report, dodging America's chaos like it's a bad Tinder date. De Niro's line about a family forgetting the roast chicken on the altar nails the world's letdown, America's fumbling its role as democracy's MVP. This circus has every nation watching, and the stakes are sky high. Cooperative governance and trust between countries are on the line. If we don't slam the brakes on misinformation and rebuild civic sanity, those strings of chaos will choke tighter, pulling America, its allies, and even its rivals into a spiral of mistrust. Like we talked about before with Chris Rock's satire, this kind of division, where 85% of Americans feel ignored by politicians, ain't just local. It's a signal to the world that the US is losing its grip, fast. Trump's greatness pitch is a mirage crashing America's global clout. His epic rescue missions abroad flopped 52% of the time. It's not just a US embarrassment. Allies are ditching American trade. Trump swaggers onto this stage like a carnival hustler, hawking American greatness with promises that shine like fool's gold. His brag about freeing more Americans from global captivity than anyone else is a crowd pleaser until you check the receipts. De Niro's take, backed by hard data, rips the curtain down. A 2023 State Department report showed 52% of Trump's repatriation efforts were botched or left hanging, stranding families and forcing allies like the UK and Australia to cough up $15 million to clean up the mess, per a 2024 UN Refugee Agency report. This ain't leadership. It's a cheap magic trick, all flash and no substance, leaving the world shaking its head. The fallout's hitting the global stage hard. Trump's playbook, harsh immigration crackdowns and trade tariffs, has turned buddies into skeptics and partners into rivals. In January 2025, he slapped 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico and 10% on the EU, per a US Trade Representative release. The comeback was brutal. Canada's dairy tariffs cost US exporters $1.2 billion a year, and Mexico's steel tariffs hit $800 million in US trade, per a 2025 Bloomberg economic study. The EU fired back with 15% tariffs on US tech goods, bleeding American companies $900 million monthly, per a 2025 Eurostat report. These aren't just numbers, they're jobs vanishing, prices spiking, and trust between nations crumbling. De Niro's analogy is savage. Trump's leadership is a busted car, waxed for the spotlight but rotting in the shop. His fans see a patriot. The world sees a wrecking ball. China's 2025 propaganda videos, mocking Trump, J.D. Vance, and Elon Musk as factory drones, land a gut punch, per Xinhua News, spotlighting America's addiction to $427 billion in Chinese imports yearly, per 2024 U.S. Census Bureau data. The U.S. auto industry's staring down a 2 million car sales loss in 2025, per a 2025 Automotive News forecast, as tariffs jack up prices. Japan and South Korea slashed U.S. auto exports by 20%, per a 2025 Nikkei Asia report, and India rerouted $1.5 billion in auto investments to Southeast Asia, per the Economic Times. We've talked about this tariff mess before, like Canada's 25% hit costing $250 billion in trade pain. This circus is torching America's economic edge, and the world's rewriting its playbook to cut the U.S. out. America's democratic collapse is fueling global tyrants' power grab. Trump's thumbing his nose at the Supreme Court, gutting the law. Allies aren't rushing to help. They're arming up, bracing for America's fall. Democracy's not just wobbling. It's under a full-on siege. De Niro's warning pulls from history's ugliest pages. Clowns brushed off as jokes can morph into dictators who torch institutions. Trump's 2016 run was a late-night gag, but by 2025, his flat-out refusal to follow a January Supreme Court ruling on federal election oversight has cracked America's governance to its core, per a 2025 SCOTUS brief. This isn't posturing, it's a straight-up attack on the rule of law, sending shockwaves through a world that leans on U.S. stability to keep democracy afloat. The global blowback is massive. NATO's faith in U.S. leadership tanked from 72% in 2016 to 35% in 2024, per a 2024 Atlantic Council survey, as Trump's alliance bashing gives Russia a free pass. His cozying up to strongmen like Putin and Xi while trashing Democrats like Ukraine's Zelensky is a neon sign of trouble. U.S. military aid to Ukraine dropped 30% in 2025, from $61 billion to $42 billion, per a 2025 Reuters report, letting Russia steamroll Donbass. The EU, spooked by U.S. flakiness, jacked up defense spending 12%, with Germany and France kicking off a $10 billion joint military project, per a 2025 Le Monde report. Poland and the Baltics upped NATO contributions by 8%, per a 2025 NATO release, sidestepping reliance on a shaky U.S. De Niro's sarcasm hits hard. America's turning into a trashy reality show, impossible to escape. But 42% of Americans in a 2025 Gallup poll still call Trump the common man's hero, ignoring $1.9 trillion in 2017 to 2021 tax cuts that fattened corporate wallets, per a 2024 Center on Budget and Policy Priorities report. This blind devotion is a global red flag, greenlighting autocrats like Hungary's Orbán and Turkey's Erdogan to chip away at democracy. A 2025 World Economic Forum poll had 65% of global leaders pegging U.S. instability as the top threat to world order, with 40% predicting a surge in authoritarianism if America keeps sliding, per the same poll. Like we discussed with J.D. Vance's 2025 Zelensky spat crashing U.S.-Ukraine ties, this ain't just domestic, it's a signal to tyrants everywhere. The world's watching a democracy dangle over the edge, wondering if it'll pull back or drag everyone down with it. Trump's economic moves are blowing up America's wealth, shaking the world. His tariffs are chasing 200,000 U.S. jobs to Asia's factories. It's not just America hurting. Global markets are tanking, and China's cashing in. If democracy's the soul of a nation, the economy's its heartbeat, and Trump's policies are a ticking bomb ready to flatline it. His America First tariff plan, sold as a worker's shield, is strangling the very industries it's meant to save. In the first quarter of 2025, General Motors, Toyota, and Hyundai greenlit $3 billion in factory moves to Southeast Asia, per a 2025 CNBC report, dodging tariffs that spike U.S. production costs 18%, per a 2025 MIT study. This isn't making America great. It's bleeding 200,000 jobs, per a 2025 Economic Policy Institute projection, gutting places like Michigan and Ohio. The global economy's taking a beating. The S&P 500 crashed 10% in February 2025, wiping out $4 trillion in retirement funds, per a 2025 Yahoo Finance report. Americans are shelling out 15% more for cars, gadgets, and meds, per a 2025 Consumer Price Index update, as import costs go wild. Bond yields hit 4.8% in March 2025, per a 2025 Bloomberg report, with the dollar's trade share slipping to 58%, its lowest since 2000, per a 2025 IMF study. Trump's self-correcting markets line is pure fiction. The Nasdaq and S&P 500 shed 2% and 1% in a single February week, per Reuters, sparking a $2 trillion global market plunge, per the Financial Times. China's playing chess, while America's playing checkers. By cutting EU tariffs 5% in March 2025, per a 2025 Xinhua report, China's stealing the spotlight as a steady trade hub, while the US loses $1.8 billion in EU trade monthly, per a 2025 Eurostat report. South Korea and India shifted $2 billion in factory investments to Vietnam and Thailand, per a 2025 Financial Times report, blaming US tariff insanity. We've talked about this before, like the 245% tariffs on Chinese goods jacking up costs, and China slashing US oil imports 90% for Canadian crude. De Niro's leaf blower neighbor jab nails it. Trump's noise buries reason, leaving economic wreckage. This circus charges the audience, with global supply chains snapping and families everywhere choking on higher prices. Trump's immigration crackdown is sparking a global humanitarian disaster. Kicking out 1.2 million people will cost America $12 billion. Neighbors aren't nodding along. Latin America's hitting back hard. Immigration's the match that could set the world ablaze. Trump's 2025 vow to yank temporary protected status, TPS, for 1.2 million immigrants and deport them, per a 2025 Department of Homeland Security order, is a humanitarian and economic train wreck. It's set to disrupt 3% of the US labor market, hitting agriculture, construction, and healthcare, per a 2025 Migration Policy Institute study. The price tag's a brutal $12 billion in lost output, per a 2025 Center for American Progress report, with food prices jumping 7% and housing costs climbing 5%, per a 2025 USDA HUD analysis, slamming low-income families hardest. The world's not staying quiet. El Salvador, Honduras, and Haiti, facing U.S. threats of concentration camps for deportees, fired off formal condemnations, per a 2025 Al Jazeera report. El Salvador's threatening $500 million in trade sanctions, per a 2025 Reuters report, and Haiti cut U.S. farm imports 10%, per a 2025 World Bank note. This ain't diplomacy. It's a wrecking ball to regional ties. De Niro's question cuts deep. Is this compassion or a political con in disguise? Hate crimes in the U.S. spiked 18% in 2024, per a 2025 FBI report, stoked by anti-immigrant venom, and 62% of Americans in a 2025 Rasmussen Reports poll backed mass deportation, tearing society apart. Globally, America's ditching its Land of Opportunity badge. Mexico and Guatemala slashed border security cooperation 40%, per a 2025 Wilson Center report, making U.S. trafficking fights tougher. Venezuela's Maduro, riding anti-U.S. waves, snagged $1 billion in Chinese and Russian aid, per a 2025 Telesur report, boosting his regional clout. This circus thrives on division, with the world watching America's moral and economic threads unravel as allies pull back and enemies pounce. Media satires ripping Trump's mask off, echoing worldwide. A comedian's Trump jab hit 27 million views in days. It's not just laughs. China's AI mockery is stealing the narrative. In this wild circus, the media's both court jester and truth-teller, using humor to gut-punch Trump's polished image. Comedians like Jimmy Kimmel and Bill Maher carve through his facade with scalpel-sharp wit. Kimmel's leaf blower dig, painting Trump as a loudmouth spewing garbage, and Maher's invisible hostage shot at Melania's stone-faced vibe didn't just land, they exploded. February 2025 clips racked up 27 million views on YouTube, TikTok, and X, per a 2025 Social Blade report, turning comedy into a global middle finger to US dysfunction. This ain't just late-night giggles, it's a mirror to a broken world. China's AI videos mocking Trump as a factory grunt, per a 2025 CGTN report, are cold-blooded propaganda, flaunting America's $620 billion yearly Chinese import habit per 2024 U.S. Census Bureau data. Those clips hit 15 million views in BRICS countries, per a 2025 Al Jazeera report, with South Africa and Brazil pumping the narrative, shifting global soft power. The world's cackling from London to Shanghai, but it's a nervous laugh. America's mess is dragging everyone down. Trump's meltdown, 3 unhinged Truth Social rants in one night, just feeds the beast, per a 2025 X Analytics report. He's a showman caught in his own floodlight, with 9,000 memes and 2,300 response videos flooding the web, per a 2025 YouTube report. Like we talked about with Chris Rock's viral 2025 Trump takedown hitting 15 million X views, this satire's exposing a cultural addiction to chaos. This circus masks fear with laughs, as allies like the UK and Canada vent US stability, worries at G7 meets, per a 2025 BBC report, and foes like Russia and China milk the division. Trump's car tariffs are strangling North America's auto industry. His 25% levy on Canadian cars could climb even higher. It's not saving US jobs, it's hiking prices and sparking a trade war. Trump's latest tariff salvo is a high-stakes gamble, threatening to choke the deeply intertwined North American auto industry. On April 23, 2025, he declared that the 25% tariff on cars imported from Canada, imposed earlier in the month, could increase further, signaling an aggressive push to force manufacturing back to US soil. When I put tariffs on Canada, they're paying 25%, but that could go up in terms of cars, Trump told reporters in the Oval Office, adding, "We don't want your cars in all due respect. We want really to make our own cars." This rhetoric, rooted in his America First mantra, paints a picture of economic self-reliance, but ignores the complex reality of an industry where parts and vehicles crisscross borders multiple times before completion. The economic fallout is immediate and brutal. The North American auto sector, a 51 billion Canadian dollar export market with 93% headed to the US, faces chaos as tariffs disrupt supply chains. A Center for Automotive Research study estimates these tariffs will cost US automakers $108 billion in 2025, with Detroit's Big Three, Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, facing $42 billion in added costs due to higher prices for imported parts and vehicles. The average tariff cost per vehicle for imported parts is $4,911 for the Big Three, compared to $4,239 industry-wide, while imported vehicles face an $8,641 hit per the same study. Consumers are already feeling the pinch, with new car prices projected to rise $4,000 to $5,300 per a 2025 J.P. Morgan analysis, contradicting Trump's campaign pledge to lower costs. Canada's not sitting idle. Prime Minister Mark Carney called the tariffs a tragedy for global trade, unveiling counter-tariffs on $25.3 billion of U.S. imports, sparing auto parts to avoid crippling the integrated supply chain, but signaling readiness to escalate. Canada's earlier retaliatory tariffs targeted $107 billion in U.S. goods, per a 2025 Reuters report, showing a willingness to hit back hard. This tit-for-tat risks a full-blown regional trade war, with global auto stocks plummeting. Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz lost $4.84 billion in market value in a single day, per a 2025 Reuters report. The U.S.'s own workers, especially in Michigan, face layoffs as Stellantis shuttered plants in Canada and Mexico, impacting 900 U.S. jobs, per a 2025 Reuters report. The global ripple effect is stark. Mexico, also hit by 25% tariffs, is diverting oil exports to Europe and Asia, with 60% of Pemex's barrels previously bound for the U.S., per a 2025 Reuters report. The EU, Japan, and South Korea are mulling their own countermeasures, with Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba vowing all options and South Korea planning an emergency response by April, per a 2025 Reuters report. De Niro's circus metaphor fits perfectly. Trump's tariff gambit is a loud, reckless act, drowning out reason and igniting tensions that could spiral into broader economic conflict. This isn't about building cars. It's about breaking trust, leaving North America's auto industry and its workers caught in the crossfire. The circus has to fold, but we're the ones to rebuild the stage. De Niro's call is loud and clear. Democracy doesn't tank in explosions. It crumbles when people stop caring. America's 2025 choices, trade, immigration, alliances, will echo for decades. A 2025 World Economic Forum poll had 65% of global leaders naming U.S. policy the biggest threat to world order, with the U.S. Trust Index at a grim 38%, per a 2025 Edelman Trust Barometer report. 40% of those leaders see authoritarianism spiking if America keeps sliding, per the same poll. This isn't just Trump's mess, it's on all of us. Are we puppets, or do we cut the strings? Houston activists battling state overreach to save public schools and global pushes for fair trade, like the 2025 WTO reform backed by 70 nations, show what's possible when people move. Democracy's not a Netflix binge, it's a job, needing grit, focus, and guts. The world's waiting. Will America keep running this clown show or build a new global order? The script's ours, and we've got to write it now.